And we are back. Hello, everyone. We are back. Pink is Power. This is episode 7, and we're going to talk about securing insecurity, which is a nice topic in a way because I know, I feel that we all can sincerely relate to insecurities and how insecurities can absolutely take us over. So, myself and Angela, again, we're going on an unscripted energy. So we're just going to work with what comes up between the two of us as we kind of just dive into insecurities. So let me just take a moment to feel into myself around, insecurity. And I would say I have been an incredible hostage under insecurities. And I'm going to hold, probably compassion as well for the parts of us that are unknown as we are in those places with ourselves, and because it's a very vulnerable place to be in when you're in a place of insecurity, because the lens in which you look out at the world feeds back inside of us the insecure program that's running the show. So I will share my insecurity, which is kind of funny because I'm laughing at it because I'm like, oh my God, where am I going to go with this one? I remember one of my biggest insecurities has always been my body size. I I was born into being just kinesthetically like unbelievable when it came to sport. Anything I did with sport and movement, I was so adaptive in that intelligence field. So I ended up being like very great actually at sprinting in what's it called? Athletics. There we go. Couldn't find the word. I ran in the All Ireland semi-finals, 100-meter sprints. I was super fast. I had a pair of strong pair of legs under me. And then I went into judo, and I always weighed heavier than I looked. And I always heard that phrase, you're just big boned. You're just big boned. And the sport of judo and martial arts, if anyone does that, they'll understand that you weigh yourself in for the competition. So unfortunately for me, when I was only 14, I weighed the same way as an adult woman on the scales. So I ended up always having to fight like very advanced judo women because, women who were like in judo for years because of the weight category. And that would always like bring up a lot of like insecurity for me, like real insecurity. And I grew up with 3 amazing brothers who found my weak spot and would absolutely just throw the word fat at me. And of course, back then they didn't intend to have such an impact on me. We were siblings. We just wanted to absolutely annoy the fuck out of each other. A dig for a dig, an eye for an eye, that kind of a feel, that power dynamic. You hurt me, I'm going to hurt you back. Siblings have that. And so my beautiful brothers, and I'll say beautiful because I love them today, but back then as teenagers, I wanted to fucking strangle each one of them. And they would call me fat. And I just remember like really starting to look at my body through that lens of fatness. And it led me down a path where could never be physically comfortable in my body around girls. I would always, even when I was on dressing or when we would all meet up and we'd go into town, as teenagers, the minute I would walk into their company, the first thing I would do was scan their body just to see how they looked in their clothes. And if I thought inside of me that they looked great, then straight away I started to feel not good enough even more. My fatness feeling would just take me over and I would become viscerally uncomfortable around them. And, I would just kind of shut down in my energy, get very quiet, lose my confidence. So I would. And interestingly enough, I always seemed to hang out with friends that were always thinner than me. It was almost like unconsciously I was putting myself into those experiences to always not feel good enough. And I'll say unconsciously because insecurity can be a very deep program whereby you don't even know it's running the show. You really don't. And it's become such a fixed way of being that you're not objectively aware that you're trapped inside of the subjective experience, creating the experience. So I didn't realize that I was unconsciously hanging out with people with smaller shapes to continue to compound my feeling of I'm not good enough. And that's kind of how the unconscious was running the show for me as a teenager. That continued to really affect me then, obviously, with boys. If I didn't get picked by the boys, I would put it down to my body not being good enough. If I was going out with a boy and he started to ghost me or distance from me, again, the self blaming energy would kick in. I would begin to blame my body. And the more I blamed my body, then the more I misused my body. The more I felt and believed in order to be accepted that if they had sex with me, that then they must like my body. And that's one way of, getting caught up in a way of coping that is leading to unhealthy outcomes. So if my fatness came up, I would overeat and make myself feel even more fat. I would sleep with guys just to feel like I was being accepted. And it was such, like, it just dominated me. It dominated me everywhere I went. I couldn't be comfortable in my body. I couldn't be comfortable around people. Even when I got naked, even when I got older and I would get naked, I would judge my own body and I would assume that they were seeing me through that lens that I was seeing myself. So I had this real ugly energy over Karen, and it robbed me of confidence. It robbed me of liberation of self. It dictated how I behaved around people. So I started to become, my way of coping then was, I started to wanting to be seen by people. So I started to become the wild one in the friendship, the one to go out with Karen. She's crazy, she's fun, she's wild. So I would do things that other people would say, my God, I wouldn't be brave enough to do it. Like I would jump up on stage and dance and allow myself be picked for songs. I'd get up and do karaoke. And even though that looked like, God, she's got confidence, it was actually insecure confidence. I was actually trying to feel big because I actually felt so tiny in myself and my energy. So I began to behave like this overcompensation energy of, oh, I'm confident, I'm big, look at me, I'm loud, I'm here. And that was to fill the insecurity gap, that deep, big hole in me, where it was just an inner world of complete depression, sadness, self hate, self rejection. And all of that, does lead to energies of suicidal thoughts. Like it really does. When you really hate the self with such intensity, you're going to want to alienate and eliminate who you are, because you can't separate from yourself, as we know, Angela. Like you can't. The person you are, that you're designed to be. You can't separate from that, but you do everything you in your best energy to distance yourself from being yourself and to avoid all that discomfort. So my way to avoid the discomfort was I became, in a fake way, very loud, which looked like I had confidence to everyone, but I actually didn't. And they're all of the ways in which, for me, the insecurity ran the show for me. And it ran the show up until I almost turned 40. And then I paused on life and I went off and did the inner looking, the inner learning, the inner reflections, the self inquiries, to untangle myself from what was a huge personality shaped energy based off of insecurity. So when you hear that, Angela, and you reflect on kind of one of your big insecurities and how it ran the show in your life. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But I'm curious before I move on to me,
Look at
how
me. I want to
you.
quickly get out of me and onto you.
No, no, I'm quite happy. I will come back to me, but I'm curious as because I'm sure other people are curious as well, how you made that connection to yourself. I know you said it took you till 40, but how you made that connection and what was, your defining moment where you realized that you no longer wanted to do that to yourself, or, you no longer wanted that insecurity to run the show, that you kind of realized, hold on a minute, this has to change, something has to change. What was that defining moment? But also, what advice would you give other people that are feeling similar to you right now, or have experienced that, where, they've been told a story that the intention was never to cause harm or hurt. It was just sibling rivalry, it was just messing, it
Mm.
was all of those things. But as we know, as psychotherapists, you a therapist a lot longer than me, I'm just recently qualified. But I do know that how when something happens at a young age, or or something said to us, then that story can go in on us, and something you talk about at great length. So I'm curious to know, what was it in that moment that caused that, huge shift for you?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. We always suffer from it's, of course, we suffer from events around us and situations and what people say, do, and actions, because everything is feeding back to us. A feedback about what we then do is interpreted as a feedback about ourselves. So it's not just the external world, it's also the narrative. It's what we do with the story inside of ourselves about ourselves. And as you heard there, my story about Karen, I was over identified in this genuine belief that I am fat. There was no room for anything else but I am fat. And because of that, then the energies of I'm lovable, I'm not seen. And what became the real, we'll say the energy or the moment that kind of cut through that fixed state was I remember having a conversation with my oldest brother. I've always been close with my oldest brother and many levels and many times in our life. We always do this kind of like where we naturally just, separate from each other and then we naturally like just fall back into deep dialogues with each other. And I remember sharing with him, I was in therapy and I'd begun kind of sitting on the chair in therapy at age 22 because I was severely depressed. And again, suicidal thoughts had come back to kind of invade me in a way. And when I started to sit in the chair, the therapist was able to kind of ask me, we'll call it gently, reframing how I was looking into the world. And it just organic, there was an organic moment with me and my older brother where I said to him, I was really, really affected by the word fat when I was growing up with you. And he looked at me and I said, I'm not blaming her at him, but I said, it really affected me when I used to hear you and the two other brothers call me fat. I said, because I actually really did believe it. I started to really, really believed it. And he looked at me and he said, Jesus, Karen, I've never seen you as fat ever. And I was like, what? And he was like, I've never seen you as fat. He said, you were beautiful. He said, like, you were so fit, you were so athletic, you were so muscular. He said, he said, I always admired you. I admired your discipline, your training. He said, like, you were beautiful. He said, all of my friends wanted to go out with you. And all of our other brothers' friends, because we're all similar in age, their friends always wanted to go out with you. He said, we never saw you as fat. He said, if anything, he said, I only gave as good as you gave me. He said, you were unbelievable with the punchline. So he said, I was only throwing that at you. Because I could see it stuck. He said, like, I could see it did something. So he said, for me, it was my way of dealing with you. But he said, I never, ever, ever saw you as fat. And it hit me like, it almost like woke me up out of this hypnosis that I was in. And I just had this profound awareness and space from a story I had been telling myself for nearly 20, over 20 years, actually, at this point, that my whole focus was carnous fat, that I never, ever, ever considered the possibility because I always believed everyone saw me in the way I saw myself. That's what happens with us. If we attach to a belief about ourselves, we genuinely assume that that's how we're seen. And I just sat back from him and this fucking incredible like flood of awareness just came crashing into me. Really just shook up that fixed way of seeing myself. And this idea that others possibly saw me as attractive. And I was like, I never thought my brother's friends ever found me as attractive. I never considered myself as attractive because I never looked at myself through that lens of, oh, I'm an attractive woman. And it just hit me how and I mean that's with compassion to myself, not like angry but just how I had imprisoned myself. I had put Karen into a cage called fatness and I locked her in there and she had suffered so much under that energy and how I had lived my life through that belief of I'm fat, therefore I'm ugly, therefore I'm not going to be ever wanted and nobody cares about me. And to cope with that, then, how do you cope with that? You become bigger in your in my personality, I became big, loud, brave, you know, all of those fakery energies. And that's okay. It's a coping mechanism, the brilliance of our ability to cope. But I just sat there like, and a sadness hit me that I had been the one carrying a story. It's not about what others were saying. It's actually not. And how I never checked it out. I actually never checked it out. I had all those years where I could have actually turned around and said to even my friends, I'm in your company and I'm judging myself against you and I'm feeling so fat and insecure as I'm sitting here with you. I never gave Karen permission to use the truth of her voice to speak her truth, her most vulnerable truth. And I now know, you know, when we get very vulnerable in the honesty of how we're feeling and we lean into vulnerability and we talk from the truth of how we're feeling, it actually creates a deeper sense of belonging. And yet when we don't go into our vulnerabilities and we're trapped in our insecurity, we're isolated on an island of our own selfhood. Our self agency is on this island, and the island is not a lovely place to be in. And as within, as without, if I'm not loving myself on the inside, I'm going to look into that world through that lens of unlovable, and the world will start to feel like a very insecure space to move around in. So it was just a simple conversation, but an extraordinary moment of me going, holy divine fuck, I put myself in this prison. I have robbed myself of many moments of joy and peace of mind, peace in my own body. And I couldn't believe it, you know, and I gave him a hug and I was like, I actually just never, ever, ever, ever considered the possibility that others might look at me beyond how I'm looking at myself and see me as beautiful. And I was sad for me. He was sad for me in that moment, you know, and he hugged me and he said, no, Jesus, like you're beautiful, Karen, like you're beautiful. And it was just, yeah, it was a shocking. And I was able to look at all of the times how all of the experiences when a guy broke up with me, when I was hurt and betrayed, how I used that as information to confirm. And it was never even about me, Angela. And that was the thing that shocked me. It was never about me. What people do towards me is actually more about what's going on for them. It was not to do with me. But I had took everything people said, every action, and I interpreted through my mean and making, my little filter, and I blamed Karen. Like, oh my God, did I blame her? So that was the moment. Yeah, that was the profound moment for me.
Thank you so much for sharing. I was waiting for you to keep going because I was like avoiding my own stuff here,
I know, yeah.
as you do. Keep going. What I often think about is, Maya Angelou's poem, where she talks about that woman that walks into a room and holds herself,
That's a
uh,
great poem.
and
Yeah.
that reminds me of you. So, when we first met, that presence and so on, and how you are and that confidence you hold in your own body, I would have associated that with you. So, when you had told me that story before about your experience and how you had felt around your body in the younger years, obviously I was quite taken back because I wouldn't have put the two and two together. And that just
Mm.
goes to show the work then that you had to do and you did on yourself and the realizations and the place you came to. I suppose for me, when I think of kind of insecurity, to me, it was around less about probably how I looked, but more about who I was and how I was in the world. I loved my family. I do love my family. My parents are dead, they're no longer with us. But at the same time, I was very aware that we had very little growing up, whereas my cousins, so there was a lot of wealth around me in the extended family, but very little in our family. I was born into a recession and it was really felt in my home and 5 kids at the time. And there was, I felt very measured by some relations. I remember my relatives that would roll up when I was a child back in the day and in a Rolls Royce, and, the neighbors would even be fascinated by their gorgeous car. Like they would have been millionaires, still are millionaires, and they're lovely, lovely people and they've earned that and they have every right to be that way. And they're very good people and very good to me. But I remember seeing, those cousins and being very aware of what they had and what I didn't have. And at the time, at a young age, I would have internalized that. And as a part of that, then it would have been an insecurity in me that I would have been very driven based on that, that I had to have, I had to achieve. And if I didn't achieve, then I was less than. And that's why for a long time, I would have been a high achiever. I would have, remember at the time when I got a job in RTE, the small little town girl, and the newspapers did an article at the time. And it was such a big deal that people were like, oh my God, I can't believe you got a job in RTE. Because it came from this little estate, and lovely estate, don't get me wrong. But I think people were quite shocked because they didn't see it coming at the time. A little girl from the town expanding her wings. And it was because I was always really good at visualizing. I wish I was as good now. I was brilliant at, when they talk about the secret and how you visualize and you put everything into your mind, no matter what I visualized back then, I made happen for myself. I was incredible at visualization, but it was all based on me not feeling enough. So I didn't feel enough of myself, which was interesting. And I never, the minute there would be a point in my life, I would have to fill it with something else. I would have to organize something. I would have to put on an event. I would have to, I'd have to be the best at whatever I put my mind to. But I would never felt enough. So I never felt my best. I never felt I was good enough. And so as a result of that, I was really good when I think now. But I think the reason I don't stress about things now is because I'm really content in myself. I'm happy in my lot. I want more, as in I have more to do. I wouldn't have went back and studied a degree if I didn't. I wouldn't have went and but everything now is based on what I want. Back then, as I was growing up, it was based on me not feeling enough. And I thought the more I was seen in the world, the more presence I had, the more people would value me because I didn't value myself. So as a result, I didn't value myself. I remember being around, these really influential people, these big names, and thinking, how did I get here? How did I get here? And when people say to me, I remember getting employee of the week on multiple occasions in one of the TV productions I worked for because I was such a hard worker, but I still didn't see it. I'd still think I was a fraud, when I worked as all these different big jobs. I'm going, it's only now I realize I got here because I'm really good at what I do and I'm bloody talented and I'm well able to do this, but I never believed it all the way up. I remember thinking I was such a fraud. That's how I felt. And that was based on growing up, and probably there was like I come home and nobody, like my mother was amazing, I loved her, but nobody would ever say to me, what did you get in your exams? There was never any emphasis put on, no one cared. And maybe that was a good thing in one way, and some people would say, God, I would have liked that, but I wanted a little bit more. I wanted acknowledgement. If I got a gold medal in athletics, I was involved in all different sports like yourself. But it would be like, oh, why didn't you get the gold if you got the silver? That might have been said. There wasn't, but if I got the gold, there was very little emphasis put on that. But when I look back now, there was different ways of that being presented to me. There was different pride. I just couldn't see it as a young child. So like that, I internalized it. Unless I get the best, unless I do the best, then it's not good enough. You're either first or you're last, this mentality. And that carried me all the way. But I was miserable in it. Um, I don't think I enjoyed the process when I look back. I don't really think, the journey of where I am to get where I am. I don't know if I enjoyed much of it. Like people said to me, because I worked in a record label, I was able to go to concerts for free. I was backstage with artists and stuff. God, that must have been amazing. Never. I can't tell you if I ever enjoyed it one bit. I don't think I did. It was never an
No.
experience that I sat in and go, oh, this is good. I was usually looking at my watch or my clock or my whatever, trying to get out there. I didn't enjoy it. So there was all of those things. When I look back, I was driven by an insecurity to meet that need within myself, to feel like I was enough or I was validated. But ultimately, I only got there through loss. I go through when I lost, people. It was that moment where I realized what was more important in life, and what was more important for me is actually to like myself and to be happy where I'm at, meet myself where I'm at. Not to be ambitious, because I like experiencing new things and I like expanding. But to finally to be able to sit in a space where I liked myself and liked what I had achieved and be proud of myself. This is the first time with my degree in psychotherapy that I've actually went, I am so proud of myself. When I was studying years ago, I don't remember, I never felt that way. I never felt a sense of achievement. No matter what I did, I didn't feel that sense of achievement. Whereas now I do, and I go, oh my God, this is lovely. I'm able to appreciate it. And I'm able to go, you did this, you put all that work in, you worked really hard while you were minding your family, while you were being a good wife, while you were working. You did it, and I could really appreciate it. And now the value I place on myself is not based on what other people think of me or what other people say of me. I finally value who I am, whereas before I was looking for everybody else's opinion of me. What did they say? Like, if my boss didn't acknowledge me, if people didn't say well done or all of those things, I would feel like such a failure. I would sit in a space where I would need that reminder that I was doing a good job. Whereas now I do not get fazed by any of those things. I'm like, oh God, I'm enough, and I feel it. But it has taken me all that time. It has taken me so much to get there. But now that I'm there, it has freed me so much, because before, if there was ever criticism for my work, it would take me a week to get out of it, back when I was like that. So if I got praise, it wouldn't last a day. But if somebody said, actually, you did this or you did that, now it might have been something very small, that would eat away at me, and the sense of failure would come upon me like I was not enough. I wasn't, and it would really dominate me. It would keep me awake at night. Whereas now, if somebody says something to me, it just bounces off me. It is what it is. It rarely happens now, but when it does, it's like, it is what it is. I don't care anymore. I'm not attached to it, but it doesn't dominate, because I know my own worth. I know that's just not a big part of who I am.
Mm.
I'm sit comfortably with who I am. But of course, I still have insecurities. Who doesn't? But that's about other things. But that would have been the biggest dominator of my life, would have been not feeling enough. Um, and I would have measured myself against wealth. I would have measured against myself, my relatives. I would have measured against what was accumulated, and what they had that I didn't have. And I felt very looked down upon. I
Mm.
felt that there was that part that, we got the hand-me-downs of the rich cousins. They were lovely. I'm not judging that. They weren't trying to do something nice. I think it's a sweet thing. And it was never anything that they did wrong. But this is how I felt as I internalized it. And that's why, as you know, for years, if somebody gave me something, I repelled it. I hated receiving. And it was something that you said to me, Angela, when we receive, we open up to other things in the world. I want to give you a gift. You would always come with something for me. If you called to the house, you'd have like a plant, or you'd have like chocolates, or you'd have something lovely. And I would have a hard time with that first. And you were really good at getting me past that. And that goes back to always getting the hand me downs, always have, like, it was like a handout, and I did not want to be a handout. So I wanted to always, it's like a therapist said to me years ago, you're the first person to pay. You always, like, the minute you come in the door, you just hand over your money, and I'm like, because I never wanted ever to be a question that I wasn't, paying my way, and heaven forbid that somebody should give me a handout, because I couldn't stand it. Whereas now I see the difference, but it has taken a long time. And I know I'm not the only one that has had that as a result of being given things as a child, and kind of, it came from a place of pity. And but I don't think it did. But I think as a child, I saw it as pity. I saw it as, you know, I didn't have enough. We weren't enough. So let me give you something. When really it was coming from a place of generosity. But I internalized it as that. So even now, I can't have a loan. I can't stand those things, that part of me. I can't, like, I hate to owe anybody anything. There's like that part of me hanging over me that would make me really uncomfortable still to this day, because money would be a thing. Whereas I have to, like, oh my God, abundance around me, but and blessings. But at the same time, heaven forbid that if I had to owe something to anybody, that would make me very uncomfortable. And it would
Well,
also
there's
make
your
me very,
medicine.
what?
You're going to have to move into being uncomfortable and take out a loan to be free.
You're right. And I do, because I'm to be very comfortable with it. It's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, and I know that, but I'm getting there. Like I can accept gifts now. And when
Yeah,
somebody says to me, "Oh, can I give you this? This would be lovely on you," and like a dress or something, like that would have been really uncomfortable for me, even that. And now I'm like, yeah, give it. And I've started to give. I've started to give to other people more. And I realized the more I'm doing that, like as in materialistic things, like if there's an item of clothing or something, I'll say to somebody, "Do you want that? We're around the same size, but I don't like it on me, and you don't, don't give me anything." So I'm practicing all the time of giving stuff away so that I am able to receive. Not that I'm doing it to receive, but what I mean is that I'm not uncomfortable with receiving. Because if I don't, I realize I am blocking so many other things coming into my life. And I think that's what people don't realize is that when we don't allow to receive, and when people want to give and want to give their time, and they, I'll do that for you, or I'll do this, it's coming from a place of love. And to be open to that, that's what I've had to learn, that it's okay, just let it happen, don't be uncomfortable with it, just let it pass through you. And then as a result, it's like all the other things are able to come in at the back of that. So
yeah.
I've had to learn that, and it's taken me years. And so that would be my insecurities. Yeah.
And insecurity is, it's a journey from not feeling safe inside of yourself to starting to feel safe in your own presence. And like, and you illuminated that, and I have in the conversation, like you being in the jobs that you were in, you couldn't enjoy them because you weren't safe in your own selfhood to be able to be in these spaces. I couldn't enjoy being in the company and presence of people around me with just a sense of ease because of the lack of safety in my own body. And that's what insecurity does to people. And the sadness with the energy of insecurity then is, it keeps us all trapped on a loop. And I love the energy of a loop. That's where the word loopers come from. It's not being negative, it's actually a clever play on words. When somebody's stuck on a loop, they continue to act and behave from that place. And that's where the term loopers come from. With insecure energy, a person and all of us will absolutely stay trapped in the familiar suffering and pain, and it's like learning how to bridge out of that. So when you that's why I smiled and laughed when you said, I wouldn't be comfortable with having a loan. I see that as your great liberator, that when we move through all the discomforts that we have about certain things, there's great there's great medicine in the thing that would make us feel so uncomfortable. Like there's a wonderful medicine because it's just going to give you freedom of yourself and of that narrative around that. And I learned that very strongly with the body when I went into doing the tantra training, because a lot of my work was having to work with my own body and reclaim myself through an embodied way, because I couldn't welcome my own body in any way. I couldn't like look at its nakedness, and the work in tantra like made me work with mirror work and begin to like rub very gently and touch my own feminine energy and my physical form, and work with all the discomforts that came up in my physical form. And I remember hearing my tantra teacher saying, like, intimacy with self is the most sacred energy, because if you don't have intimacy with self, you're never going to have intimacy with friendship. You won't be able to have intimacy with your lover. And she was like, you're going to have to get comfortable with all the parts of you that are so terrified of being seen naked. And it is terrifying to be seen naked when you can't accept your body. Now I'm in a place, even with the shamanic medicine woman, where with like a group of 13 women, we go swimming in the river naked. And now I can look at my body and I can look at a woman's body with such awe and wonderment of the sacredness of the shape of a woman, regardless of their size. There is no category for me in my mentality now of, thin, slim, big. I don't see that. I just see this incredible form energy that is a host to the sacred, and so much manifestation comes through the feminine body, life, creation, expression of life. So I know that place whereby the shadow side of like learning, okay, I've told myself the story of fatness. Then I had to learn all the subcategories that were attached to the energy of fatness, and even down to sex, like even as down to like oral sex would be would have been so uncomfortable for me, because that's again another form of intimacy. I did not like the idea of my yoni. I did not like what the idea of someone else looking at it or connecting to it. Therefore, if a partner's head went down there, I would clench and I would go, "Oh, holy fuck, what are they seeing?" So even at that deep level, like that was the layers of work. It wasn't just the story of being telling myself I am fat. It was the journey of the disconnect with my physical body and all the ways that that was unconsciously playing out in my world. So when the tantra training kicked in, like I had to begin the yoni work, which is like literally sitting in front of a mirror and looking at your yoni and feeling all the disgust, the shame, the guilt, all of the horrors that you would tell yourself about that part of your body, and really sitting with the self inquiry of it, feeling that emotion, breathing into the discomfort, not letting my body contract under discomfort and avoid and run like I like to do and go up into my head and overanalyze and overthink it. It was like meet the shame, meet the guilt, meet the disgust, meet the story, sit into it, breathe, hold space for it. And after a few weeks of working with the mirror work, then I started to not look at it in any other way other than, oh my God, this part of my body holds a lot of emotion. There's a lot of intelligence in this part of my body. And then when I did get with Jeff, you know, it was like the intimacy of the safety of being naked and the safety of having him explore that part of my body was just so peaceful, so comfortable. I mean, I was just laid back, legs wide open, you know, here she is. Here's my beautiful Yoni, my beautiful Fanny. Go talk to her, tell her a story, you know, play with her, do whatever. And to go from like crossing your legs or hiding them under the blanket and not looking at them, being intimate, to now like truly being able to look down, look at them, being intimate with you and enjoy the intimacy and the safety of that. And there's nothing in the way, there's no like psyche boundary or barrier, you know, that you're trying to
Yeah.
hide behind. Like it's such a great like peaceful flow of energy to be in the body, and you're not threatened by any aspect of your own body, and you have great safety in the temple of what you are, because we're all a
Yeah.
sacred beautiful temple. And that's only why I smiled when you said, you know, the idea of alone. I couldn't, I was roaring laughing. I was like, I think she should take a big effing
Well, I
fucking
will.
loan.
What I will.
Go
What
shopping.
No, what I will say is, when when I was speaking in the EU Parliament in June, when I was invited over to be a guest speaker, there was no part of me that felt I shouldn't be there. There was no part of me that felt I didn't belong. There was no part of me that questioned whether I was enough to be invited.
Yeah.
I stood there in my own power, and I felt very much like I belonged, and very much like I was so comfortable in my own self. So had that been a few years ago, I would have questioned myself. I would have questioned my worth. I would have questioned all of those things. Whereas now, anything like that, I don't question. I know where I am, and I know my presence matters, and I know it means something. So I have that, and and that's wonderful, because that's growth for me, and that's that realization,
Mm.
that part of myself, that word. Am I comfortable with owing any money? I still have to get to that point, because when you grow up where it's like, oh, we owe this bill, we owe that bill,
I
there's that
know
kind of
it.
stuff in
Know
your
it so well.
it in your own childhood, and you're aware that your mother is really worried, and there's all of those things that you see as a child. You tell yourself very early on that I'm not going to be in that position, and you do everything to work towards not being in that position, because you see the impact that it's had on a parent and the worry that they've had. And you also see it when some days there's only one meal on the table. That's what it would have been like for us. Whereas some days, most days I went to school without a lunch, where there wasn't like lunches. Now I think it's incredible that most schools have these hot food lunches for primary school, and there's other measures in place for secondary school. I think that's incredible. And I actually said it to my husband. I said it to Stephen. I said, because Stephen grew up in a very different, he was, in a very fortunate situation,
Mm.
there wasn't that wasn't a concern in his family. They weren't, they grew up in a different situation. But he would say, I said, imagine if there had been hot food lunches when I was going to school. Imagine, because I
Mm.
remember what it was like. I remember being so hungry. I remember like going the whole day without food and then going home and it would be one meal. I remember all of that, like it's so well, and that's why, like, even though, my kids, they don't have that, like, I will overfill their lunch boxes sometimes, I like throw in extra
Yeah.
things, and I'll throw in those little notes, that they get to read, and that Mammy loves you, and all of those things. Now, I knew I was loved by my mother. It wasn't a case of that. I think it was very different back then. I think there was 5 kids. I mean, I really appreciate the difficulty of that. There was very little income. There was all of those things, and the schools, when I look back now and I think the school would have been very aware that I did not have a lunch anytime. There was no effort to ever say, should we give her something? Now, I'm not blaming the school. They did a lot, like, don't get me wrong, but when I think of it now, I can't imagine a school would overlook a child that didn't have a lunch going in. So it's those things. I mean, I think I went probably my whole primary school without ever having a school lunch. Do you know
Mm.
what I mean?
Yeah.
And, so when I look back at those things, and when I look back at my mother being concerned, oh God, we have this bill, we have that bill, all of those things, and then yet trying so hard to my mother was an amazing mother. I mean, God, she was so loving, so kind. I mean, she never raised her voice once at me. She was really, really gentle, and really kind. And I know I get that side of my personality from my mother, that gentleness, that just a lovely person. But at the same time, I was so aware of the differences. I remember my cousin sometimes, as she realized, she would like give me one of her sandwiches, or she'd give me that, if we went away at athletics, and she could, have a lunch with you. And she goes, right. And she'd get out her lunch and she'd give half to me and she'd have half, so there would be stuff like that. So I was very aware of the differences, because I could see the differences very clearly. And I'd had a lovely friend growing up across the road, and she would bring me over. She'd make sure, she was like, what are you doing on Christmas Day? And I was like, no, I'll have Christmas. Because then you come over to my house and you have Christmas dinner with us too. So there was a lot of love around me, a lot of people that did so much for me. So I was very lucky in lots of ways. But at the same time, I was very aware that money was a thing, and I definitely don't want it to be a barrier in my life now. So I
Yeah.
think that's why
Great.
I have achieved. I've got a lot of things, accolades, a lot of achievements, a lot of everything. Um, and my husband is such a hard worker, and I think that's what drew me to him as well. That, like, he is in the abundance. He's very good with money, and I'm very good with money. But at the same time, I I think I've come to the conclusion lately that I've realized I've no fear around it as much anymore. And I think that's
Yeah.
where I've come to, because I went, you've done everything you need to do to kind of, you'll always be okay because you're really resourceful. And I think that was the thing. That was the difference.
That's a good one to tell yourself.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, when I go back to, like, when I go back and feel into, like, being a child in my home and looking at what was the messages I learned about money through my parents, because both of them were very different in their relationship with money. When I looked to my dad, it was like the message I learned was money is hard. You have to work very hard to have money. And he worked very hard his whole life. My mother was the worrier of the bills. So mom didn't have much power with money. She had a fear of money. She had a fear of not having enough of money. And that shaped me to have this fear of money of, okay, I have to work very hard. I have to save money. I can't do anything, not unless I have the evidence of money, because of the fear of how am I going to pay for something if I actually don't have it? Because that was the feedback from my mother. And then that created the scarcity mentality with me with life, going, well, I can only do so much because I only have a certain amount. And I remember breaking through that paradigm that I had created in my psyche, which is not anyone's fault. It happens based on the environment we grow up in. The environment is almost like it's a measuring for what we become to believe in our in sense of the terrain of the environment we're in and how far we can cross. But I remembered like going back in 2020 when the big contract came in, which was a massive amount of money. And I remember not having it. I remember not having it. And I remember sitting there going, I have a choice. I can stay in the old paradigm of you can't say yes to this because you physically don't have the money in the bank, and you'll have to save really hard, and you're going to probably have to take on more clients and work extra hard to, because I did that through college where I'd work and be in college at the same time, just to pay for the travel and the staying overnights up in college and that. So I had done all of that, and I remember going, what if I don't have to keep figuring this out? Because look at what I'm doing. Look at the story I've been living with when it came to finances. Is I have to be very responsible, and there's a lot of energy and hard work that goes into maintaining that. So I just remember sitting there going, what if I don't have to figure this out? What if I said yes? What if I did the most scariest thing, which is a huge leap of faith when you jump out of the familiar place you're in and you jump? I know energetically they say that's the quantum jump, when you jump out of an old paradigm up into a different frequency. And I remember just saying to Jeff, I just know in my knowing that I have to say yes, but I don't know how this is going to work out if I do say yes. But I just know I have to say yes, and I don't know where we're going to get the money from. And he said, well, trust in your yes then, like trust in that, Karen. He said, you cannot trust in your conditioned awareness, he said, of what you think is the right way to do. He said, because look at where you learned that from. And I said, no, you're right. I do have money wounds in me. Like I sincerely do. I'm never safe in myself, not unless I have a cash flow of 1,000 in the bank. Then I'm like, yay, we're in a safe place. And that's what I had come to do with myself. Whereas once I had 1,000 always as cash flow in my bank account, looking back at me, I always felt we were on a safe path. And I just said yes to this, like, I think it was like 24,000 at the time. And I'd like 1,000 in my cash flow. And I remember saying yes and then going, okay, I'm not even going to try and figure this out, because I remember Einstein's incredible statement of, the consciousness that creates the problem cannot be the same consciousness that, finds the solution. So the mindset that creates the problem, you can't have the same mindset to find the answers. So I just remember saying yes, sitting back and going, now I have to really fucking trust and have faith and faith. And it was a real rattling of all that I had clung onto originally and the world that I was very familiar in. And I remember just going, like, for a moment after I signed the contract, going, what have I actually fucking done to myself? Like, what have I done? How am I going to, my brain kicked in? How am I going to pay this back? How am I going to do this? And I just went back into this, okay, stop it, because you don't know. You cannot know the unknown. You cannot know the mystery. You have no way in which the mystery is going to work in your world. You just don't know. And then 5 days later, I come into my parents, and a lovely situation had unfolded whereby my parents turned around and said, oh, we've this amount for you. And it was exactly the amount. And I remember going, you couldn't fucking write this. If I had said no, which is fine, I would have stayed in all that I knew, and I would have continued in my dynamical way, my passion around money. So when I did that, I then realized, Jesus, I have no control here. All I had was anxiety, and I loved that. And that's your one out of Eat, Love, Pray. She says that, you think you have control, but really all you have is anxiety. And I didn't realize how much anxiety I had connected in with money. And I didn't realize that because of me sincerely believing with money, and this is about insecurity, money is just the entity energy that we're speaking to. I didn't realize how much insecurity and anxiety I had with money, because I had learned to live very in that familiar edge of, once I have 1,000, I'm okay. It'll be all okay. And to give all of what you're comfortable with up, like to really give it up, and to not know the other terrain ever, because I've never been in that world where, like, so much ridiculous money comes in and out. You know, I've never been there. I've always been in where dribs and drabs of cash flow, continuous cash flow of maybe 100, you know, comes in from a client, and you know it's coming, and you know what's coming in, you know what's going out, and you're content. So we did that, and now we continue to do that, whereby money is not even an energy now with me and Jeff, which is weird. It's even weird to say it. We have no idea where our money comes in or where it's coming in through next, but we have become very comfortable. And this is only a new terrain. This is only a terrain we're in. We have to learn to come out of this terrain and move again into a new terrain. And that's what I've come to learn with everything now is, you know, what is the story that I have about anything? And is that story truth? And it's always going to feel like truth. And I think that's something that's good for us to really understand. It'll always feel like it's a truth because it's the wisdom that we have at that time. So, me right now, where I'm at with money, and me absolutely not knowing where money comes in, but yet we have extraordinary abundance that keeps coming in. You know, we've clients that fly us over to where they are, they pay for everything. We're never looking for money. We're never without money, but we're never looking for it. I'm not saying that that's the correct place either. I'm just identifying through the beautiful conversation that we're having, Angela, like, because you made me so aware of it again for myself, is it's really always going to come down to me always to try and identify for myself, where am I on my path? Where am I with a story in which I mightn't be aware that the story still holds something over me rather than me being in charge of myself? And, you know, you just brought that up for me again, listening to you sharing. And like, you know, the enormity of our life that we go through, like the enormity of what you went through, like you met poverty in an honest way. You've had to be from childhood, and that's not even like, as you know, it's not down to bad decisions from your parents. Like I grew up with my parents, you know, struggling with money. They're like brilliant people. But my, you know, my father came from a massive household, 14 of them. You know what I mean? And my mother came from a household, God bless her, where her dad died when she was 16 and she had to take over. So, like, they both came with their wisdom and their knowing, and they created their home, and we took on their wisdom and their knowings, you know. And I've just become, because of the inner work, and I know you know this, thank God for the inner work, guys. And I would say to people, you know, the inner work is so sacred because you learn so much about yourself, and you learn ways in which you're keeping yourself stuck in a corner of your own life canvas where you're not living freely, where you're living under conditions that you think are freedom, but they're actually not, to learning to trust in yourself in such a profound way. And that does take work, and it's not an easy reclamation to find that safety. And that's what you've really pointed out, you know, so beautifully, like all of that beautiful work that you've had to do around poverty, to being honest about, you know, being in incredible jobs and places, and that lack of safety in your own knowing of your greatness at that time, which is different today because I know you've anchored in your greatness, like you can see that, you know, to now still learning, well, where else am I not anchoring in my greatness? Where else might I be like blocking my own greatness from coming in more? And like, it's amazing because sometimes we don't even see it. Like, I just realized that about money by sitting here with you today, that Jesus Christ, yeah, I've jumped out of an old frame of with money. I'm in a new frame, but that doesn't mean that frame is better. It just, am I more freer in my power of myself in this lifestyle that I'm in, or am I still trapped at some level that I'm unaware of right now? And that's what this does. It's always food for thought. It's always room for consideration of where else might I not know that I'm still stuck in something, the ties that bind, you know. So it's such, like, for me, I think it's like we need to try and have a bit of compassion for the path that we're on. We don't come in with a great knowing of things. We learn it through the limitations where we find ourselves stuck and limited because of our insecurities. And I know, and I maybe you can talk to that, Angela. I just know that the very thing that caused me the most suffering and discomfort when I went into it, when I stopped running from it and stopped trying to fill my hole up with the fake energy of pretending to be all confident, when I actually faced my insecurity, that's when I became freer from my own disenabling of myself. That's when my freedom came in, is when I turned into the very thing that was blocking me. And I said, look, okay, I need to get to know this. That's when my freedom of Karen really started to come in. And I would love people to maybe hear that, you know, whatever insecurity that you have, not that it's okay, but there's medicine in it. There's always medicine.
Totally.
So don't
Yeah.
judge it. Don't be ashamed of it. Don't be hard on yourself. It's medicine. It's the very thing that's going to teach you something even more greater about yourself when you go and sit with the insecurity. I think that's the magic of it. That's what I've come
Yeah.
to learn with it, you know, and I'm still learning, you know, and I still have,
Yeah.
as we say, the insecurities. I still have little ones, you know, but they're fine. I meet them, you know, sometimes
Yeah.
I'm acting out of them and then I'm like, oh, hang on a minute. Oh, hello,
Yeah.
insecurity. You know, let's calm down a little. Let's just,
Yeah.
you know, make room for you here. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's big. It's a big arena, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And I think, as you said, like when you get to that place when you're meeting yourself where you're at, but also the awareness, when we become aware of it, then we can kind of do something about it. And sometimes it's that lack of awareness that protects us and we're not sure. But it's interesting. Somebody said to me the other day, oh God, the neighbor called down and they offered to bring my child off for the afternoon for ice cream and stuff like that. Someone they know. And she was like, I just didn't want to do it because, that pressure that I'd have to do it. And I'm like, no, you just take it, you just allow it. And that's where I'm at now. It's like, yeah, it's okay. It's okay for other people to do things for me, and it's okay to receive, and it's okay to give where I can in my time, and it's okay to accept and, to receive. And that's okay. That's not a weakness. That's not that there's something wrong with me. It's okay. People like to do good things for other people, and to recognize that it's not a burden. It's just a nice thing. But also, I love to give to other people. I love to give time. I love to give, when people need me, and I don't feel bad about that. And I don't think that person's taken from me. So why would other people feel that way? And it was that realization I had to come to, because, recognizing it in myself is the same mostly in others. And I probably will eventually take out a loan, Karen. You never know. I just don't need
We'll
one.
go on a holiday.
I don't say that like, oh my God, I'm very affluent and I'm flush. I
Oh,
don't mean it like in a very kind of pretentious way. What I mean is, right now, thankfully, I'm in a very good, I'm comfortable in my life. We're able to do something, we're able to do lovely things. And I think that's the thing. Should I, or if I did need to take out a loan, would I? Yes, I think now in my life I would. I think I wouldn't be. I'd probably be slightly squirmy at first and probably a bit uncomfortable, and it would be something that I'd have to kind of, even as I'm saying this now, I'm rubbing the side of the chair because there's that little part of me that realizes it's still difficult. But I would do it because guess what? I know my mother and father situation was very different. I can reflect on that now. I can reflect on my father had to leave school at 11. He was, he had to go work on a farm at 11 years old. I couldn't imagine my sons having to do anything like that. He didn't get the education. My mother was very intelligent, but she was a stay-at-home mother and she had to do that. My father worked on the buildings. He did all of those kind of things. He was a hard worker, but when times got tough, it was difficult because he didn't have the qualifications that other people had. There was a lot there as well, and he's dead now, so I don't like to bring up too much when people are not here to be able to say what they want to say. But ultimately, I realised that me and my husband, our situation is completely different. Our children are in a very different situation than what I was in. Plus, it was a different time. As
yeah,
I said, like going to school and being hungry. Imagine a school seeing that now and
yeah,
allowing that. They wouldn't even dream of it. And I'm not knocking the school I went to. They were just lovely. I don't mean it that way. But what I mean is that day is gone. Those things would never happen now.
yeah,
You would feed the child. You would recognize. A teacher would recognize. So there's all of those things. So what I mean is not like we're very fortunate and I'm very blessed, and I know we have so many things that I didn't have as a child, but that's what I worked towards and I
Yeah.
made. And I think even my awareness about choosing a man, unconsciously, that was going to be a great family man and a great person and someone that was like me and would work really, really hard, but not to the point that my children would feel impacted by that. They come in and they know that they're
Yeah.
well fed, they're looked
Yeah.
after, they don't see they don't see me worried about a bill. And I don't say that to take away from other people that might be listening now that might have to worry about bills. I know plenty of
Of
people that still
course.
worry
Yeah.
about their bills, and I don't want to take from that, but I mean it as a result of my childhood. I suppose I worked really hard not to have to see my children's faces reflecting back at me like I would have with my mother, at the time.
Yeah.
I remember as a child going, can I do something? Can I figure this out? And at times,
Right.
as a very young child, I tried to figure things out, and I shouldn't have had to. So there were the things that I never wanted my own children to have to worry about as adults, or as in their life and now as an adult. So I do everything, to kind of make sure that they're not worried about money, but at the same time that money isn't the be all and end all, as you talk about. And you and Jeff are brilliant like that. I love how you operate in the world. You're not overly attached to that. You just flow. You just
Yeah.
trust in, all of that. And I do really admire that in me, and I see that. And when you took on that contract, because I remember exactly that, I remember how much that inspired me, because it made me go, I need to be a little bit more now here like Karen and take a little bit more leap of faith. And you really are brilliant at teaching me that. I have to
Well, it
say
looks
that.
like chaos to other people. And look, Angela, in truth, when I separated out of that 14-year relationship, like, remember, like, I lost everything. I was out of work. I had no money because of the bullying situation. I lost the home that we lived in. I had to go in and declare myself homeless. So, and the biggest takeaway from that was I actually lost everything. And I remember sitting out on the beach going, I actually have nothing. Like, I've no money, I've no job, I've lost my home. Um, I don't know how I'm going to start all over again. But I'm grateful for to that, because when I absolutely lost everything, I was actually sitting there going, but I actually have me. I have my kids.
Yes.
I have my family around me. I have my friends, and they matter. And I will start again. And I did start again. And, I got my little rental home at the time, and I started working then for the HSC. And I was like, so yes, it was a death, an ending of a cycle in my life. And I was absolutely destitute in that moment. And so I guess I'm not afraid of it now. Like, now, even though, like you, I grew up with the fear of money over me, because your parents, God love them, they're your safekeepers. So when you see them in fear, you're going to take that on naturally, but to have to meet that then, as I was 39 when that happened, and I was the adult, and my life completely just fell apart down to zero. And because I went there, I'm not reckless, but I do have a recklessness of, I'm not afraid of it. Like, I'm not afraid. I'm not afraid if money was to be gone in the morning. And I don't mean that either insensitively to other people. That can only be said and spoken from a genuine place where you've genuinely been on your knees. And I remember, like, I had to lean into St. Vincent de Paul for food baskets for a while. I had to, because I couldn't even afford a food shop. Aaron and Fia would even, they remember saying all the tins of beans and, tins of custards that came in the food box, but it gave me great gratitude and humility and appreciation for the little things when I ended up being with the little things. So there was great gratitude for the petrol in the car to get to Tremor and have a cup of coffee. There was great gratitude for things that I wouldn't have, like, looked at through that lens of gratitude before. So, because I ended up being there, I there is a sincerity in me when I say I'm not afraid being without or with. There's no fear of either or of the either two vibrations, because I just have a genuine, beautiful, profound trust in the higher energies and the sacred energy, and I know I'm loved, and I know I'm taken care of, and I'm moving into a different spiritual lens by saying that. I used to think that I was being punished by God if I ran out of things, or if I didn't have things, or things didn't work out. So there was always that like spiritual pain in me. But now I'm in a place where my life feels so safe. But I'll go back to that being because I'm genuinely in the safety of myself. And when you have safety with yourself, you don't lose that when the world around you goes into chaos. That's really what I'm trying to say. When you find you and you work with you and do that inner development work that we're doing, and I know others are doing out there, and you have genuine safety with yourself, like the world of chaos cannot take from that safety that you have with yourself. And I've really come to really, really value and see that. So that's really what I'm saying. You
Yeah.
know, I'm not saying that it's easy to lose everything. It was very painful for me. I suffered. I went through another dark night of the soul. I was in a lot, I was crying every day. I was in panic mode every day. And then the breakthroughs came through eventually for me in my way of looking at it. But now I'm in a place where, you know, yeah, I feel safe with Karen. I feel safe with who it is that I am, and that is my medicine for whatever's going on around me. I'm okay with it. I don't get caught up in it. I'm at peace with it. I send it love. I pray. I bless upon people always. I open medicine wheels for people. You know, that's my way of, like, you know, being in service to the situations around me. But yeah, safety of Karen has taken me a long time to come home to, you know. But now that I'm there, yeah, the world can do its thing, and I'm okay. I'm okay
Yeah.
inside of my own safety. You know, it doesn't go away from me. Yeah, if
Yeah,
that
but
makes
also
sense.
what I've noticed for you is that you don't get like you are safe in yourself. Like I go back to looking at you when you were in New York and you're on the billboard in Times Square, and oh God, I love that billboard. It was so beautiful, and you know there is your gorgeous picture. Um, and you need to reshare that again. It's just gorgeous on your page. On Pink is Power, actually. Please put that up because I want people to see it. And it's just seeing you on it and that glow. But and you're messaging me, and you're like, there I am, but you're not overly attached to it. You're just like, there I am, you know, on a billboard, and like remembering that your book, like you're connected to Diana Wentworth and people like that, like big names that are in with you on that book, and they're on the billboard in Times Square, and you're just like having a good giggle about it. You know, it is what it is. And I
Eating
think,
edibles and
yeah,
getting lost.
I'm getting lost. Yeah,
That's another story. We don't have time because we've gone way over,
that's
but I love
another
it.
story.
Yeah,
Yeah.
eating edibles that I didn't know were edibles. Thought they were jellies in a jelly bowl. And being lost.
Yeah, I
Until four
remember.
in the morning. Oh my God. Anyway.
Yeah, fun stories. And that's something that you have to talk about. We have to. I loved that journey because I felt like I was
Oh,
going on it with you at the time. And I was so excited for him back home here in Ireland. And you're sending me all the updates. And I'm like, I need to be there.
oh,
I
come
need to
here.
be there with you.
It's a fun world, but you know, talking about insecurity, you know, even that world is filled with it, and it broke my heart when I was there, hanging around the energy of, you know, celebrity people, and just being able to see their insecurities in them. You know, these beautiful women who were cosmetically like just, you know, done to a T, but it didn't matter how they looked on the extern, you know, internally they were suffering because they didn't have that safety with self. They had their journey with insecurity. So it really, and that's the truth, guys. It doesn't matter who we are. Like, it doesn't matter who we are. If we have a celebrity status, it actually does not matter. We are human, and we have insecurities, and we have stories that we tell ourselves inside about ourselves that nobody else ever gets to hear or know, and it can cause great suffering to us, and we don't need. And that's the place I'm in. It breaks my heart. It's like, you know, after going through it, and you've gone through it, Angela, like, we don't need to be in so much pain and suffering on our path in this place called life, because it goes in a blink of an eye. You know,
Yeah.
we're here and then it's gone, you know. So yeah, my heart breaks. I'm broke when I was over there as well, watching everyone in their insecurity. yeah, it was devastating for me to see it, you know. So it's everywhere. It is
Yeah.
everywhere. So
And that's
thank
another
you.
podcast, I think, something to
Yeah.
delve in, even from that point of view, to go a little bit further the next time, and our tantric one. I'm sure people are dying to hear that. I want to hear, because the fact that
Yes,
you're trained in it,
I
that's
know.
that's a glass of wine, though. We said we'd have that
Yeah.
over a glass
No,
of
we need
wine.
to do that together. Well, a glass of wine for sure. Yeah. If I'm
Yeah,
going to be
yeah.
talking about my yoni and
Yeah, I know. And I know there's someone, I won't mention names, somebody will be listening, had a great giggle, one of our podcasts, and I know this gentleman will be listening. He'll be having a good giggle this time too. I won't mention his name
well,
because
I think I shared another little bit for him there with the idea of me like
yeah.
just being able to lie there with legs wide open and be like, talk to her, tell her a story.
Tell her a story.
My poor husband.
That's
Anyway,
hilarious.
I love it. Oh, thank you so much for your sharing as well, because you just made me realize a lot of things as well when I heard you share there as well. And yeah, I love it, and like powerful, powerful sharing as always, Angela, and the truth
And
and
you
the
too.
honesty of it. You know, like yeah, it's great, and yeah, we hope it lands for you all, guys. And yeah, let us know. Let us know how
Yeah,
it's
get in
going.
touch.
Yeah.
Our episode 7. We're our
On
7th. Yeah.
what did we call it? Securing insecurity.
Securing insecurity.
I love
But
it.
we've definitely gone over on this one.
That will be grand, won't it? Thank you, guys. What I'll do is I'll just stop the recording there. But thank you all. And as Angela said, it's episode 7, and we've gone into it in a big way with you today. Thank you, Angela. Do you want
Thank
to say
you.
close it out there?
Just thanks for listening, and keep connected, because you might get something from it. I know I do every time I talk here. Little bits about myself that I didn't even realize I needed to bring up and bring to the surface. And I think that's what it is, isn't it? When we bring it out into the surface, it no longer has power over us and no longer has hold over us. We take back our own strength and our own story and our own sense of self when we, keep things hidden and keep things beneath. It has a power, and it's when we release it, it no longer does. So it's about, don't allow things to hold you back, kind of be free in what you need to say, and there is no shame in it, and there's no reason to feel that way if you do. So
that's a beautiful way to close that down. Thank you, darling, for that. And until the next time, pink is power, guys.
Yay.